Hello and welcome back to my channel. I will focus on only Flask web installation. We will be able to set up Flask on our machine. Let's get started. I'm going to create a text file or a note which is going to be Flask _note.py. So this is the file I'm going to be using basically for teaching or taking notes for Flask. I would have done it a .txt file like this, but I don't like it. Okay, we could also do it a .txt. Let's just change this to, can rename it and change it to txt. So this file now becomes a txt file. Now I'm going to be focusing on one thing. I don't want this video to be very long, so I'm going to talk about it very fast. We're going to look at introduction to Flask web framework. Now in the introduction to Flask web framework, I'll be focusing on making you understand what Flask is all about. Flask is a popular Python web framework used for building web applications and APIs. So Flask is used to build web apps and APIs. Now it is also designed to be lightweight. Lightweight and flexible and easy to use. So that is why Flask is becoming a good choice for both beginners and experienced developers. One good thing with Flask, they follow the WSGI. The WSGI. The WSGI stands for Web Server Gateway Interface. So Flask follow the WSGI, which is Web Server Gateway Interface. So they follow the Web Server Gateway Interface design patterns. So that's why Flask is becoming popular, and it is based on this WSGI Web Server Gateway Interface Toolkit and other Jinja 2 template engines. So they are normally based on the WSGI and the Jinja 2 template engine. So that's a brief introduction that you need to know about Flask. The rest I will talk about it very fast, then we keep going into setting up Flask on our machine. I don't want this video to be very long because I have another episode that is going to run for about an hour. Now, there are things that you need to know. There are key benefits of using Flask. Okay, I could give you the benefits. So the benefits of using Flask is minimalistic and simple. So that is one benefit. There are many benefits of using Flask. Then it's also routing. I'll just outline them for you. Maybe routing, basically Flask uses a decorator. Flask uses a decorator-based approach for defining routes, allowing you to map URL pattern to Python functions easily. Okay, they can handle request and generate response. Request and generate response. That's one beautiful thing with Flask. Then template rendering. So one good thing with Flask, it integrates with the Jinja 2 template engine, which provides a powerful template rendering capabilities and allowing you to separate your presentation layer from the application logic, prompting a clean and maintainable code structure. That is one good thing with Flask. Then the HTTP request handling. So another good thing with Flask is that whenever you use Flask, it supports a method. Support method like get, post, put, delete. Update. So that's one good thing when working with Flask, and making it easy to manage different types of requests and intersection with server. Another thing that I find it so fascinating about Flask is the built-in development server. So Flask is also having that built-in development server, which comes with the testing and debugging, the testing features and debugging of your application locally before deploying it to production. So that is one thing that makes Flask very useful for testing and debugging before deploying application. Okay, then extensibility. So it's one of the powerful thing in Flask because it has modules. It has a modular design that allow developer to easily add extensions to enhance the functionality of their application. So there are numerous third-party extensions available for tasks such as handling forms, database integrations, authentication, and more. That's why Flask is a very good approach for you to use. And I know you would love it when you're building your application in Flask. Then the rest, full support. So another thing when handling Flask is that Flask can be useful to create RESTful API. So making it a popular choice for building web services that communicate with other applications or devices. So these are the things that I find it so handy when it comes to working with Flask. And now in the next approach, I'll be showing you, first I'll show you how to set up Flask onto your machine using Linux operating system, Linux or Mac operating systems, Ubuntu and maybe Kali and other operating system. Then I will try also to show you some of the commands that you can use that can be applicable when working with Windows operating system. Let's first make it much easier. So setting up Flask and activating the virtual environment. So this is going to be on Linux and Mac OS. I'll also try to guide on Windows as well. Now let's see how we can set up Flask onto our computer. So install Python and pip. So the first thing would have been for you to install Python and pip, but I assume that you already have Python installed on your computer. But these are the commands you would use: sudo app update and sudo upgrade. Then Python will ask you to confirm installation by saying yes. So you use this to get that. Let's see if you can run this pip. I'm not going to install because I already have Python installed on my computer. Maybe just to demonstrate. Pip. Okay, sudo update and sudo upgrade. I'm just doing this for those ones who may learn on this video and they would want to work with a Linux operating system. So this is what I expect you to do, and once it is done, I'll show you the next step that you need to follow. Now our next step is to install Python, which is going to be sudo app install Python 3 pip. I already have pip installed on my computer, so I can clear this and say sudo app install Python 3 pip. This is for new beginners. So you see, 0 upgrade, 0 newly installed. I already have pip installed on my computer. I explained that to you. Now, once you're done setting up that, the next thing is install virtual environment. So to install the virtual environment, you just need to write a command: sudo app install install Python 3 venv for virtual environment. venv for virtual environment. So let's run it here in our terminal. Sudo apt install Python 3 venv. Say yes. So it has installed the virtual environment for us. That is one good thing with, it's one of the good thing with Flask. Now we need to make our Flask project directory, but with me, I'm going to be working in a directory which I created for web development. So when we get to my desktop and I list for you, you will see that I have a folder here on my desktop called web development. So I'm going to cd into my web development, cd into web development. Now when I ls that directory, I have a directory for Flask. But to make learning more interesting, I'll create another folder for Flask. Then I will cd into that folder. So I'll mk, which is make directory. Then I'm going to say Geoff Flask. So I have a folder here, Geoff Flask, which I can make that folder look better by readable using the snake case, Geoff Flask. Then when I press enter, I can ls, you'd see I've created the folder Geoff Flask. I think I've not created the correct spelling of Flash, so I can maybe create a folder like that, Geoff Flask, and this is much better. Now when I ls, you will see I have Geoff Flask here, which is much better. Now I can cd into Geoff underscore Flask, enter. Then I can ls, you see I don't have anything in that folder. So that is one of the beauty of working with Flask. Now I can set up a virtual environment into that directory. How can I set up the virtual environment? I'll just punch in so the next step here is set up virtual environment, which is going to be Python 3 venv venv. So Python 3. Now I'm setting up the virtual environment. The Python 3 -m, which is for model, venv venv, to get the virtual environment inside that directory. So it's going to take some minutes to create the virtual environment. Hopefully it has created the virtual environment inside that directory. We could check it. We could ls, so you can see we have venv, which is the virtual environment. I can now go inside my Flask, which is this folder. I see I have some files inside the virtual environment. So that is how you set up the virtual environment in our project folder. Now the next thing is going to be activate some of you would be taking the notes. So activate the virtual environment. To activate the virtual environment, I just need to, in Linux, I need to do source venv with a /. In Windows, it's going to be a /. So for Linux, Mac, it's going to be into the bin, that is our directory, activate. This is going to be Linux or Mac OS. Then for Windows, it's going to be source, but here is going to be script, and then the // will change to the /. So that's how you can create the virtual environment in Windows. You would use the /. I think it is scripts, something like that. I don't have Windows installed on my computer, but this is what I expect you to do. Okay? Is it source or something like this for Windows? Okay, you could try that on Windows. You let me know if you're having some problems. We'll try to do something about it, but that's what I'm going to do. So now let me proceed and activate mine. I'm now going to do source virtual env / window / bin. For window you use scripts, then activate, then you press enter. Now you can see it now changes to venv, which is the virtual environment. Now there's something that you need to know. Sometimes it's always very important to upgrade pip on your virtual environment, but of course I've already done this. Upgrade pip in the virtual environment. You would write this command to upgrade that: python -m pip install upgrade pip. So this should be able to upgrade your pip. We could try this here: python -m pip install upgrade pip. For those ones using the Linux operating system. So you would see it has uninstalled the 22.02 and it has reinstalled the new one, which is pip 23.2.1. so that's why it is important to do that upgrade. Okay, then the next thing is to install Flask. Install Flask. To install Flask, you just do pip install Flask. The F is in caps, so you just go straight to that directory and say pip install Flask. Then you press enter. So successfully install Flask 3.3.2 with the module Ginger 2. Remember, I explained to you that it is based on the WSGI, which is the Web Server Gateway Interface, and also the Ginger 2 template, which Flask uses all the time. So that's what you would have to do when installing. So you can see the Ginger 2 3.12 3.1.2. so that's one good thing. I can clear up this. Next, we now need to create an application. We need to create an application. So, or maybe we need to create our first app in Flask. So let me show you how to create our first app in Flask. It's going to be very simple. Now, how do we create our first app in Flask? Create your Flask app. So to create your Flask app, we need to app.py. Now we will go inside the Flask folder and then click on a new file, then put app.py, then press enter. Now inside the app.py, we could now create our first app, which will be very simple to create our first app in Flask. So let's see how we can create that first app in Flask. You will say from Flask import Flask. Now, whenever you see Flask could not be resolved, when you come to this problem, Flask could not be resolved, meaning you have some plugin which you need to fix to avoid getting that warning. Okay, so hopefully that is okay to clear up that error. Now let's go and import. So what you're going to do here, we will do app Flask, then add app route, just route. Then we can define to get the index. So what you can do is df index, then return to render the Flask. Return, then you can say welcome to Flask framework. Then you can say if name equals to main app run. Okay. Then from there, you could just run your application by saying python app.py. So you see now our app is running into the port, local port 5000. So we could try to view it onto the browser by saying, and then the local host 5000. So welcome to Flask web framework. Yeah, so this is how you could render your first app in Flask. I hope you will enjoy, but I will also try to come up with another video how to help resolve these warnings. If you watch this video up to this point, please consider liking, subscribing, and turn on the notification. I'll continue showing you the next stage, how you can proceed with your application. Thank you, bye bye, and catch you in another episode for Django that I'm going to be uploading. So I'll keep uploading the series. Bye bye. Like, share, comment, subscribe.